to this webinar on the strategic framework for the implementation of the Basel Convention. My name is Andrea Lechner. I'm a program officer in the Secretariat working on this issue. And at the webinar today, I'll be giving you first a brief background information and overview of the work so done on this topic. And then Julie Croteau from Canada, who's the lead country on this work, she'll be presenting to you the current draft of this renewed strategic framework. So if you're ready, we can start with the first presentation. So at the beginning, to say that this whole work originates actually in the Basel Convention, in the effectiveness evaluation requirement under the Convention, Article 15, Paragraph 7, which asks that the COP is to undertake 3 years after entry into force and at least every 6 years thereafter an evaluation of the effectiveness of the Convention, and then also to consider the adoption of a complete or partial ban of transboundary movement. And then this requirement has been given a different effect over the various years of the Basel Convention. So in 1995, a first evaluation of the effectiveness took place, and the COP concluded that the Convention had contributed to the control of transboundary movement and environmentally sound management of hazardous waste. And that's also the year when the ban amendment was adopted. And then later on, the COP adopted a strategic plan for the implementation of the Basel Convention over 10 years, and then later on a strategic framework for 2012-2021. And then, for example, this last framework, they include provisions for evaluation of the achievement of the objectives within the strategic framework, and that's what links it back to the effectiveness evaluation to be carried out under the convention. At the COP in 2022, so this is when the strategic framework ran out, the last one, there was a final evaluation done of that strategic framework, and the Conference of the Parties decided that they wished to continue this work under the strategic framework and to, rather than to develop a completely new one, to actually improve the existing strategic framework. And it set up a small intersessional working group. And they decided the work to take place in 2 steps. So in the first cycle, that SIWG was developing recommendations on how to improve the old framework. Those recommendations were then presented to the last COP in 2023. And then the COP decided that now a draft renewed strategic framework should be developed based on these recommendations that were developed during the previous intersessional period. The COP asked for the small intersessional working group to continue its work. It asked it to be open to all parties, inviting representation from the 5 regional groups of the United Nations. So the intention here was to have representatives of all the 5 UN regional groups without setting a specific limit, but having it operate as a small intersessional working group where everybody can freely join. Also, observers, including Basel Convention regional and coordinating centers, were invited to join. So there was an invitation for parties to nominate members, and then also there was an invitation for a lead country to come forward and lead this development of the renewed framework. The SIWG is to prepare a draft renewed strategic framework for consideration at the upcoming open-ended working group, OEWG 14, taking place end of June in Geneva, and then to prepare a revised renewed strategic framework for consideration and possible adoption at the next meeting of the Conference of the Parties, that is in April and May of next year, taking into account the outcome of OEWG 14. So you have a small intersessional working group. The mandate for the COP is that it's to operate by electronic means, and subject to the availability of resources, it can also hold face-to-face meetings. And the group then organized itself with a work plan, and it held informal consultations in October last year. And then it's holding its meeting in 3 parts. So first part was held online last December. Then it held the second part online in March. And then the final part will be held in October, and that will be in a face-to-face setting, thanks to the generous financial support from the government of Japan. And as per the work plan, the framework has really gone through a number of iterations. I will not point each step out to you separately, but just to say that the lead country, Canada, has prepared always drafts, which were then consulted with the SAWG and revised and discussed at the 2 online meetings. And now there's a draft ready for consideration at OEWG 14. And that draft is currently also circulated to parties and observers for comments prior to OEWG 14. After OEWG 14, there might be an additional call for comments from parties and observers, but that's for OEWG to decide. And then the SIWG would finalize the draft, the renewed strategic framework, and submit it to the COP for possible adoption. And then once it's finalized, there will again be a collection of comments from parties and observers. So this is the current call for information, just to point that out, that right now parties and observers are invited to provide comments on the draft as it is set out in the OEWG 14 information document number 3. The deadline is 3rd of June, and these comments would be posted on this website, and they will then be brought to the attention of the open-ended working group. On the next 2 slides, you can see the membership, the current membership in the SIWG. So the lead country is Canada, and then the chair is Mr. Zaghloul Samhan from the State of Palestine. There's also a number of observers in the SIWG, regional centers. An additional regional center actually joined us very recently, the BCRC Argentina. And that's it already from my side. So here you can find the website with all the information of the work of the SIWG and the current drafts and my contact in case you have any questions. With that, I'm happy to hand over to the lead country to present you the current draft of the framework that is for consideration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for this excellent presentation of the process. And thank you also for all your support in the last year in preparing this work, and to the members of the Small Intersessional Working Group for their hard work in preparing this draft, and to Japan for its financial support toward the organization of the face-to-face meeting in the fall. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am joined with my team to present to you the strategic framework. Today, I would say that the webinar has a couple of purposes. So we can look at the next slide. We would like today to present to you, of course, the version that will be submitted to the open-ended working group, specifically what it contains, the content, the structure, but also some elements that require further work by the Small Intersessional Working Group. And also, we want to give you guidance on how to prepare for the open-ended working group discussions. So we have very good exchange during the meeting in June. So these are the key elements that we want to show you today. So we can already start with the draft renewed strategic framework. Currently, the draft strategic framework that you see follows the same structure as the previous one. So we have a vision, guiding principle, strategic goals and objective. We have means of implementation and evaluation. But to note, the vision and the guiding principles were not revised by the Small Intersessional Working Group because that falls outside of our mandate to review. We have mainly worked on the strategic goals and the objectives, which I will present. The means of implementation and the evaluation are still being looked at by the Small Intersessional Working Group. So this is the current status of exactly what the group has done. Let's start with the goal. We can look at them on the next slide. So we came up with 4 main goals for the renewed strategic framework. Goal number 1, parties implement their general overarching obligation. Goal number 2, parties implement their obligations on transboundary movement of hazardous waste and other waste. Goal number 3, hazardous waste and other waste are managed in an environmentally sound manner by parties. And goal number 4, collaboration and other capacity building. So these are the 4 goals that you will see in the document. Let's look at each of them individually. Goal 1 has 6 objectives, so it's quite a big one. The first one is national legislation. So national legislation to implement the obligations of the Basel Convention are in place and made available to all parties. This concept of being made available to all parties, you will see it in numerous objectives. The group, when we prepared this objective, thought it was important that, yes, countries could have national legislation, but other countries need to be able to see it. So the availability was reflected in numerous objectives, as you will see. Objective number 2, national definitions of hazardous waste and prohibitions and other control measures for hazardous waste and other waste are made available to all parties. Objective 1.3, competent authority and focal point are designated, and their information is available to all parties. Objective 1.4, national reports, we all know about this one, are transmitted and made available to all parties. 1.5, guidance on the implementation of the convention is available to all parties. And objective 1.6, measures to reduce the generation of hazardous waste and other waste are implemented. So in terms of general overarching obligation, this goal has 6 objectives, and they are here presented, and we're looking forward to discuss them at the open-ended working group or receiving your comments. Let's look at goal number 2. Parties implement their obligation on transboundary movement of hazardous waste and other waste. Currently, there are 3 objectives that have been identified for this one, and objective 2.1 is empty. It's currently a placeholder because there is another group that is working on the prior informed consent procedure, and this group is working on options to improve the functioning of the PIC. As such, when our group, the Strategic Framework group, was working on it, we said, we're just going to put this one aside at this point, and when the group, the PIC group, will have advanced its work, we will be ready to integrate this and build an objective for the renewed Strategic Framework. So this one is currently empty, but there will be something. If we look at objective 2.2, to prevent and punish illegal traffic in hazardous waste and other waste. And objective 2.3, to reduce transboundary movements of hazardous waste and other waste. So these are the 3 objectives, well, 2 objectives at this point for goal number 2. Looking at goal number 3, we have 4 objectives on this one. Hazardous waste and other waste are managed in an environmentally sound manner by parties. Objective 3.1, parties have legislations and other measures in place requiring that hazardous waste and other waste to be exported are managed in an environmentally sound manner in the state of import or elsewhere. Objective 3.2, parties have access to disposal facilities for the environmentally sound management of hazardous waste and other waste. Objective 3.3, the convention provides technical guidelines or guidance on the environmentally sound management of hazardous waste, of waste covered by the convention. Objective 3.4, hazardous waste and other waste are disposed of in an environmentally sound manner. So these are the 4 objectives that were agreed upon for goal number 3. Goal number 4, collaboration and other capacity building. Thank you very much, Secretariat. So here we have 3 objectives. The first one, Objective 4.1, is to promote cooperation with national, regional, and international bodies, in particular, cooperation and coordination between the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention, the BRS family, to improve environmental and working conditions through the environmentally sound management of hazardous waste and other waste. So this is 4.1. Objective 4.2 and 4.3 are very similar. They provide support to a very specific group of countries for different things. So 4.2 is about support to developing countries, countries with economies in transition, small island development states, and regional and coordinating center, our BCRCs, in delivering activities for the environmentally sound management of hazardous waste and other waste. So this is Objective 4.2. And 4.3, it is support to the same group of countries, but it's implementing the provisions of the Basel Convention. So it's kind of the overall convention. These are the goals, these are the objectives that have been set for goal number 4. Now let's look at the indicators. There are numerous indicators, and each objective has its set of indicators, and we cannot present all of them to you today. We chose 3 examples just to give you a sense of what it looks like currently in the document. So if we take Objective 1.2, national definitions of hazardous waste and prohibitions and other control measures for hazardous waste and other waste are made available to all parties. The first indicator that the group agreed upon is the number of parties that have national definitions of hazardous waste, and that these are available on the Basel Convention website. That would be indicator 1. Indicator 2 would be the number of parties with prohibitions and other control measures of hazardous waste and other waste that are in place, and that this information is also available on the Basel Convention website. So these are 2 indicators. These are the 2 indicators for Objective 1.2. If we look at 1.3, this objective is about competent authorities and focal point, and that countries have designated these. Indicator 1, the number of parties that have a competent authority, and that this information is available on the Basel Convention website. Very similar for indicator number 2, but it's about focal point, and that this information is also available. Indicator 3 is linked to the national reports. It's the number of parties that have confirmed in their national reports that their contact information for both the competent authority and the focal point is up to date. Here you see a set of square brackets. This is linked to the duration of the strategic framework. There is a dedicated slide at the end where we will present this. And we will need to make a decision at some point what will be the duration of this strategic framework should it be agreed upon. Objective 2.2, to prevent and punish illegal traffic and hazardous waste and other waste. So here we have 5 indicators. Number of parties with legislation in place to prevent illegal traffic, indicator 1. Number 2, number of cases of illegal traffic that have been closed. Number 3, number of parties with legislation in place to punish illegal traffic. Number 4, number of capacity building activities conducted to prevent and combat illegal traffic. And number 5 here is in square bracket. It has not, the group had not completed its discussion on this one. It's the number of discrepancies detected in the number of cases of illegal traffic closed by parties. So you see that not all objectives will have the same indicators. All of these will be discussed at the open-ended working group, and you will note that in the strategic framework, there are some square brackets in a couple of places where further work was needed. So these are examples of indicators. Next slide, please. when we did our work, the small intersessional working group started by working in a table format. We had put all of the objectives and their indicators side by side, and we thought that this way of working and presenting the information was quite useful. As such, even though it was not in the former strategic framework, we thought it would be a good idea to include a table format of the strategic framework. So as such, it's a cut and paste of what is presented up front. But here, it facilitates the reading and understanding of all of the indicators and their objective. Note that there is an extra column, column number 3, which is referred to as the convention article and source of information. In this new column that we suggest adding, when relevant, we added the article of the convention that was used to prepare the objective. And we also identified the source of information that would be used to measure the indicator. This is still under development, but the group took care in identifying the source of information, the article, and it helps the overall understanding of the strategic framework. Where is this coming from, and how will we be able to measure it in the end? So you will see this in the annex of the strategic framework. Next slide, please. One of the key outstanding issue is the duration of the strategic framework. There are 2 proposals. Proposal 1, a 3 COP cycle. Proposal 2, a 5 COP cycle. And when the group started discussing about this, it was a bit complicated to picture ourselves in the time frame that this would involve. So we prepared a table. We like table. We prepared a table where we illustrated what exactly does a 5-year versus a 3-year means in terms of the COPs and in terms of the timeline. So here you see that a 3 COP cycle is 6 years. It would take place between 2025, 2031. If we choose a 5 COP cycle, it's 10 years. We're looking at 2025, 2035 in terms of implementation. We broke it down into specific COPs where we would see, for example, when would the baseline be adopted or be agreed upon if the strategic framework is indeed adopted at COP 17, which is our next one in 2025. So cycle 1 is similar to both choices of COP cycle, but then after that, we see the cascade of date. A key difference between 6 years and 10 years is that usually for longer strategic framework implementation, we would stop in the middle for a midterm evaluation. So this midterm evaluation would be done between COP 19, COP 20, 2029, 2031. If we choose 3 COP cycle, usually there is no need for a midterm evaluation. You go straight to your final evaluation. Let's look at that final evaluation. If we choose 6 years, the final evaluation would take place between COP 20, COP 21, with a conclusion and a report on the implementation in 2033. If we choose 10 years, we're looking at COP 2022-2023 and a conclusion in 2037. There are pros and cons and considerations in both options, and they are both equally okay. We just need to make a decision collectively of what we would like for this round of strategic framework, mindful that the previous strategic framework was a 10-year one. And here are 2 possibilities for the discussion of the parties and observers at the next COP. So this table is supposed to help you identify the key elements to build your preference as a country. And the next slide, how to prepare for the open-ended working group discussion. The draft renewed strategic framework is in document N3 and comments are welcomed by June 3. We understand it's a busy period, but still welcoming the views before the open-ended working group is key as it helps everybody to understand the views of the others and get ready for the discussion in June. So those who have the capacity can submit comments for the June 3 timeline. Ideally, it would be expected that the strategic framework, the draft, would be discussed in a contact group should the plenary agree to do this. There would be a discussion in the contact group on the full strategic framework, including the goals, the objectives, and the indicators. And it would be really nice if we can also have a discussion on the duration of the strategic framework. This will help, all of this will help the small intersessional working group to complete its work and prepare for the face-to-face meeting of the fall. So these would be our advice on how to prepare for the discussion, and it sums up the presentation that we wanted to give you today. And thank you very much for being here, and we're looking forward to see your questions if you have any. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Julie. Dear participants, then it's over to you. Please, if you have any questions or comments or anything you would like to say on the strategic framework, we'll be sending out the two presentations after the webinar by email. You can either raise your hand and then ask your question orally, or you can send your questions also in the chat, as you prefer. Yep, please, we're waiting for any questions or comments. Yes, please. Anne de Jong from Belgium.
Yes, first of all, good day to all of you. And secondly, thank you for Canada for investing all the energy and time in preparing this draft strategic framework. I had just a simple question. So do I get it right that the aim is to collect comments from parties on the whole strategic framework, also on those parts that we didn't discuss in the working group itself, just to be able to prepare for the open-ended working group? Thanks.
Thank you very much for this question, and thanks for your participation. Yes, I would say that the vision and the guiding principle are outside the mandate, and these are not up for discussion at this place. But definitely, the evaluation and the means of implementation are open for comments. Just note that the group did not have the time to work on them, so the text that you will see is quite old. And the dates are not necessarily matching what we're currently working on. However, they are, of course, open for your perspective. That may actually help speed up the process and support the group in its work for the fall period. So yes, thank you.
Chance, if you have any questions or comments? If not, yeah, we will send out the presentations by email, and then this is the second of two webinars, so it's the last webinar on this topic, but it's always possible to access the recording of the webinars on our website. So actually the recording of the last webinar is already there in case any colleague could not join the webinars and would like to listen to the presentations. If there is nothing else, then thank you very much, Julie. And many thanks to all the participants for joining today. And please do not hesitate to reach out to us by email if you have any questions. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.